The winter rain hit the city like a slow, relentless drumbeat, and the streets were still wet when Adrian Hale, one of the most feared CEOs in the construction industry, stepped out of his black SUV, his jaw sharpened by exhaustion and the crushing weight of 1,000 responsibilities. His reputation was carved in steel, cold, decisive, never bending, never hesitating. Yet that morning, as he walked toward the small rental property his company was scheduled to reclaim due to unpaid dues, he felt a flicker of discomfort he couldn't quite explain. The sky was gray, the air thick, and something about the silence inside the shabby apartment made him pause. It was then that he saw the small boy, barefoot on the cracked tiles, holding a worn grocery bag as though protecting a treasure. The boy's voice trembled, quiet but fierce with fear, when he lifted his watery eyes and whispered words that pierced the CEO's armor like nothing ever had. "Please don't take our food, my mom is sick." Before the story continues, viewers, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of compassion, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. Your support helps these emotional stories reach more hearts around the world. Adrian had heard thousands of excuses before, employees, debtors, partners, but nothing like this. The boy was thin, clothes faded, hands trembling around the bag of cheap groceries he must have bought with coins. Behind him, the dimly lit apartment was nearly empty except for an old mattress and a stack of unpaid bills scattered across the floor. The air smelled of sickness, of worry, of nights spent crying quietly so children wouldn't hear. Adrian's chest tightened, a strange and unfamiliar feeling creeping into him. He had come prepared to enforce company policy, ready to be the ruthless executive everyone believed he was. But he hadn't been prepared for a child who looked at him not as a CEO, but as someone who held the power to destroy what little they had left. And that moment became the first crack in the emotional armor he had built since the death of his own wife years ago. For the first time in a very long time, Adrian hesitated. His breath caught as he looked past the boy and saw a frail woman lying on the mattress, her face pale, her hair damp with sweat, struggling to sit up. She looked too young to look so exhausted, and too gentle to be carrying the weight of such fear. The boy rushed to her side, placing the grocery bag in her lap as though he had just saved something precious from being stolen. Adrian remembered the nights he had sat beside his own daughter when she was sick, terrified of losing her just like he'd lost his wife. The memory alone nearly brought him to his knees. He felt the world shift inside him in a way he didn't understand, and suddenly he wasn't looking at tenants or overdue rules, he was looking at a family fighting to survive. As the day wore on, Adrian found himself unable to leave. He stayed longer than he should have, asking questions he never asked, listening to stories he didn't expect. The boy's name was Liam, barely 9 years old but holding himself like someone who had seen far more than a child should. His mother, Elise, had been sick for months, working part-time jobs until she physically couldn't anymore. Medical bills swallowed everything. Her husband had walked out long before that, leaving her alone to raise her child, alone to carry burdens far beyond what her fragile health could handle. Elise didn't complain, she didn't ask for sympathy. She simply apologized for the inconvenience they had caused, as though their suffering was something they needed to explain or justify. And that broke Adrian in ways he didn't expect. He found himself staring at the shabby cupboards containing barely enough food to last 2 days, and at the empty medicine bottles lying near the mattress. The boy had been trying to stretch meals, skipping some himself so his mother could eat. Adrian's throat tightened as he watched Elise try to smile as though everything were fine, even as her hands shook and her breath came shallow. He knew she was holding on for her son's sake, and he suddenly realized just how close they were to losing everything. Something in him rebelled, something human, something fatherly, something he had buried under years of discipline and loneliness. Without fully understanding why, he made a silent promise to himself that day. He would not let fate crush them the way it had tried to crush him once. Over the following days, Adrian's world began to change in ways he didn't see coming. He returned to the apartment again, and again, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with medical supplies, sometimes just to check if they were still holding on. His daughter, Emma, a bright-eyed 11-year-old, soon learned about Liam and insisted on meeting him. When she did, she took to him instantly. The two children bonded like siblings who had been separated at birth, their laughter filling the apartment with a life it hadn't heard in months. Adrian watched them from the doorway, feeling emotions he had forgotten existed: warmth, hope, connection. For the first time in years, he felt his home expanding in a way that didn't feel empty or haunted. As weeks turned into months, Elisa's condition worsened. Adrian used every connection he had to get her the best doctors, the best treatments, the best care money could buy. He offered quietly, without expecting anything in return, without allowing pride or hesitation to stand between them and survival. Elise resisted at first, humiliated and grateful at the same time, but when Liam begged her not to push help away, she finally accepted. Through every hospital visit, Adrian stood with them, even when the company demanded his time, even when shareholders questioned his sudden change in behavior. He didn't care. Something deeper mattered now. Something human. In the process of helping them survive, he found himself healing too. The walls he had built around himself since the loss of his wife began to soften. Elise, weak but gentle, carried a strength he admired deeply. Liam reminded him of what innocence looked like when life hadn't crushed it yet. And Emma, his daughter, found a friend who understood hardship, loss, and hope the way she did. Their lives intertwined naturally, as though fate had brought them together not by coincidence but by necessity. But life rarely gives blessings freely. Just when hope seemed to be returning, Elisa's health hit a critical point. One late night, after a call that sent icy fear through his veins, Adrian rushed to the hospital with Liam and Emma in tow. The doctors worked tirelessly, but even with all the resources in the world, Elisa's condition was fragile, too fragile. The children clung to each other, and Adrian stood over them like a guardian trying to shield them from heartbreak. Hours passed. The world outside kept moving, but in that hospital room, time felt painfully still. It wasn't until dawn that Elise opened her eyes again, weak but alive. Her voice was barely a whisper as she apologized to her son for being a burden, for making him grow up too fast, for failing to give him the life he deserved. Liam held her hand, tears falling silently, his small body trembling from fear and exhaustion. Adrian watched, feeling his chest tighten painfully as the memory of losing his wife resurfaced like a haunting echo. He couldn't watch another child lose their mother. He wouldn't. Not while he still had the power to change something. Over the next few weeks, Adrian made decisions that surprised even him. He moved Elise and Liam into a better apartment his company owned, one equipped for her medical needs. He hired caregivers to support her recovery. He offered her a desk job she could manage from home once she was strong enough. He put Liam and Emma in the same school, giving the children a chance to grow together. And all of this he did quietly, without turning it into charity or pity. He simply stepped into their lives the way he wished someone had stepped into his when he had needed help. Slowly, Elise began to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. The fear that had lived in her eyes began to fade, replaced by a gentle strength, a newfound peace. Liam blossomed too. The boy who once clutched grocery bags in fear now laughed freely, made friends, and learned what it felt like not to worry every minute of every day. And Adrian, the cold CEO known for his ruthless decisions, found himself returning home to warmth, laughter, and something he had nearly forgotten how to feel: belonging. Months passed, but the memory of their first meeting never left him, the boy in the broken apartment begging a stranger not to take their food. That moment marked a turning point in all their lives. Adrian realized he had not merely saved them. They had saved him too. They had reminded him what compassion looked like, what connection felt like, what it meant to be human beyond titles and responsibilities. And slowly, something deeper grew between him and Elise, an understanding, a tenderness, a possibility neither had expected but both had longed for silently. As the seasons changed, the once broken family stitched itself back together, piece by fragile piece, until one day, they realized they were no longer surviving,